We don't notice how quickly we get attached to our thoughts. It happens under our skin, not in a loud way, but in something more intimate, more stealthy. Something hurts us, and a thought rushes in like a well-meaning friend. You're not good enough. We don't ask it who it is or why it's here. We just let it in. And soon, it's not just a thought anymore. It's our identity. I am not good enough. There's the shift. The slippery, almost invisible slide from noticing a feeling to becoming the feeling. That's where emotional rigidity starts to grow. What Susan David does in emotional agility is hand us a flashlight, not a cure, not a motivational speech, a flashlight. She teaches us how to gently hold up that light to what we're feeling without flinching, without immediately needing to fix it. That's not small. That's everything. Because most of us are not avoiding our emotions because we're cold or detached. We're avoiding them because we're scared. Because to let a painful feeling speak is to let it threaten everything we've built on top of it. So she teaches presence, but not the sanitized kind. She talks about noticing, naming, allowing. But here's the thing, what we do with emotions isn't just about control or management. It's about trust. Deep soul level trust that you are not going to collapse if you feel this feeling. You might be changed, yes, but maybe that's not collapse. Maybe that's growth. When I first started absorbing the book, I expected to get tips. I didn't expect to get questions, like the kind of questions that don't demand an answer, but peel away at the layers you didn't know you had. What are you pretending not to know? And what values are you sacrificing by trying to stay comfortable? These are not soft questions, but Susan doesn't throw them at you. She offers them like quiet mirrors, and you look, or you don't. But if you do, really do, it's not the emotion that scares you anymore. It's what you've been doing to avoid it. There's a point she makes early on that stayed with me long after the book ended. Emotions are data, not directives. That sounds so clean, so easy. But try applying it the next time you feel shame or rage or grief. Try saying to yourself, here's some data. While your chest tightens or your voice wants to scream or your heart feels like it might come undone. It's not easy, but it's liberating because it gives you space. You are not your reaction. You are not fused with your thoughts. There's space between the match and the flame. You just forgot. And here's where I want us to go deeper beyond the page. Beyond the book, because something I've learned walking with this idea is that agility doesn't mean avoidance, and it doesn't mean constant calm either. It means you know how to pivot when life shoves you in the ribs. You know how to feel without falling apart. You let yourself get angry without making someone else a villain. You grieve without deciding that life is only suffering. You learn how to stay with something ugly and still believe in your own softness. This skill, this emotional flexibility, isn't about bullet journaling your feelings or meditating them into submission. It's about intimacy, not with someone else, with yourself, which is maybe the hardest in intimacy of all. We lie to ourselves more often than we lie to anyone else. We distract ourselves more quickly. We abandon our own truths, not out of malice, but out of old habit. And Susan David isn't just saying, feel more. She's saying, notice what you feel, name it honestly, and stop letting it drive your life without your consent. Imagine this. You've just received feedback that cuts deeper than it should. Maybe it's at work, maybe from someone you love. You nod politely, you smile. You might even say, thank you. But something under your skin coils. The shame, the anger, the how dare they, or they're right, I'm a failure. It sparks. That's where we usually freeze or flee. And in that tiny moment, emotional agility either blooms or dies. We think agility means grace, but it often begins with a mess, with sweat, with a pulse that's racing and an inner monologue that sounds like a war room. It starts by saying, wait, what am I actually feeling? Not just I'm mad, but I feel dismissed, I feel invisible, I feel like I disappointed myself. Getting specific is the opposite of sprilling. It's anchoring, because you can't pivot from a fog. You have to see clearly first, and clarity always starts with honesty. One thing Susan David emphasizes, and it's something I've had to relearn over and over, is that emotional agility doesn't mean emotional permission to act out. It means presence with responsibility. Like, yes, you're hurt, but can you be with that pain long enough to understand what value it's poking? Maybe you're hurt because you care deeply about fairness. Maybe you're angry because someone violated a boundary you never said out loud. Maybe your sadness is grief for a life that no longer fits. If we move too fast past our emotions, we miss the gold. We miss the moment in our values are trying to speak through our discomfort. That's the treasure map in the pain, and no one talks about that. We're so quick to get rid of the feeling that we forget it's trying to tell us something that matters. Emotional agility asks, can you sit with the emotion long enough to translate it into wisdom? Because until you do, you'll act out the emotion. Instead of understanding it, you'll blame, you'll numb, you'll self-sabotage, or worse, you'll harden. But what if instead of reacting, we paused? What if just for a beat you said, this is data, not destiny. This is a moment, not a label. I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I am not an overwhelmed person. That pause is everything. It's where your power lives, and it's where the next right step reveals itself. Now, here's something I found that the book touches on, but doesn't fully unfold. Emotional agility doesn't just help you survive the tough moments. It helps you stay soft after them. And that might be the bravest thing of all, because when life hits you hard, it's so easy to armor up, to tell yourself, next time I won't care. Next time I won't try so hard. But that's not strength. That's shutdown. True strength is learning to feel the sting without letting it build a wall around your heart. That's why this whole concept is not about being better. It's about being braver. Emotionally agile people aren't immune to pain. They're just more fluent in it. They've learned the language of fear, of sadness, of joy, of discomfort, and they don't panic when those emotions show up. They listen, they let them visit, but not run the house. And here's the most original insight I can offer from my own journey through this. Agility is not just internal, it's relational. When you're emotionally agile, the people around you feel safer. Why? Because they can be messy, and you don't make it about you. They can change, and you don't cling. They can hurt, and you can hold space without fixing them. That kind of steadiness is rare, and it's born not from control, but from compassion, the kind you've given to yourself first. Most of us think transformation happens in the big cinematic moments. Quitting the job, ending the relationship, having the breakdown that leads to the breakthrough. But emotional agility is built in the quiet, in the mundane, in the space between stimulus and response, between what someone says and what we choose to hear, between what we feel and what we do next. And those choices, tiny, invisible to the world, are everything. Like when someone interrupts you and you feel that flash of irritation, your impulse might be to shut down or lash out. But there's a flicker of awareness now. You catch it. You take one breath. You ask yourself, what am I really feeling right now? Not in a performative way, not because you want to be emotionally perfect, but because you're tired of being owned by knee-jerk reactions. That's agility, not the absence of the emotion, but the presence of a wiser pause. Or think about how often you say, I'm fine, when you're not. Emotional agility challenges that too. Not by forcing you to overshare, but by asking, who are you trying to protect with that answer? And what might shift if you told the truth, not just to others, but to yourself? The truth is, agility doesn't mean you're always composed. It means you know where you're standing internally. That's what makes the difference. Like you could be crying in the shower or pacing your kitchen or staring into space after an argument and still be emotionally agile, because in those moments, you're not abandoning yourself. You're staying close to what's real. You're saying, yes, this is hard, and I'm still here. Here's something I've learned that isn't always explicit in the book, but comes up the more you live this work. Agility is redefined every day. What was brave for you last week might feel easy now. What used to be terrifying, like expressing a need or admitting uncertainty, can slowly become natural. That's the miracle of practicing presence. You start to recalibrate your baseline. You begin to build a relationship with yourself that doesn't rely on self-bullying or constant fixing. It's rooted in companionship. But here's where it gets subtle. Sometimes emotional agility asks you not to engage, not to spiral, not to entertain the storyline that you're unworthy or broken or too much. Sometimes the most agile move is to lovingly say, "Not today. I've heard this story before. I don't need to live it again." That's not bypassing. That's discernment. You can feel a feeling without feeding it, that you can acknowledge a thought without building a house in it. We're not taught this. We're taught to chase positivity or avoid discomfort or be strong by numbing. But Susan David's work whispers something different. Strength is presence. Strength is softness with boundaries. Strength is showing up, not as a curated version of yourself, but as the real, breathing, shifting, feeling human you actually are. What that looks like in real life might be ugly and sacred at the same time. It's admitting you're scared before a meeting. It's saying no when you were trained to people please. It's walking away from self-sabotage, not because you hate yourself, but because you finally remembered you don't have to live there. And over time, something extraordinary happens. You stop being afraid of your inner world. You stop trying to control everything outside of you to avoid feeling certain things. You start letting life touch you, and you touch it back. Not from a place of defense, but from a place of grounded, truthful courage. Sometimes the most difficult part of emotional growth is realizing that no matter how agile you become, the world doesn't always reward it. You've practiced presence. You've shown up truthfully, you've named your feelings, honored your values, tried to act in alignment, and still someone disappoints you. The loss happens, the boundary gets violated, the job says no, the love ends, the illness comes, the friend ghosts you anyway. And you might think, what was the point of all this emotional work if pain still finds me? But that question reveals something we're all quietly hoping for, that self-development will somehow make us immune. That if we evolve enough, we won't bleed when life cuts. That if we're honest and compassionate and self-aware, we won't break. But emotional agility doesn't promise protection. It promises resilience. The pain still comes. But now you know how to sit with it without letting it define you. Now you know how to move through it without abandoning yourself. You bleed, but you don't forget who you are. That's the difference. Let's be real. Emotional agility doesn't make you less human. It makes you more human, more awake, which can feel like a curse on bad days. Because when you're awake, you feel more. You notice the tension under someone's smile. You sense when something's off. You can't numb as easily. But that sensitivity is not weakness. It's the deepest kind of knowing, and it lets you live a life that actually means something. There's this moment that happens in people who live with agility. It's not flashy. It doesn't get applause, but it's quiet and holy. It's when someone hurts them and they don't rush to retaliate or shrink. They just breathe, feel it, mourn it, and then they choose deliberately, consciously, not to carry that wound forward into the next room, the next person, the next day. That is sacred work. That is what emotional agility looks like when it matures. It's not just about naming your emotions. It's about living in a way that doesn't outsource your sense of self to how other people behave. So, what do we do when the pain still comes? We allow it, we don't race past it or turn it into a productivity lesson. We listen. Maybe the emotion says you need to grieve, you need to rest, you need to stop chasing people who won't hold you when you're soft. That kind of listening is a form of rebirth. It makes space for a new self, not one built in reaction to trauma, but one built in response to truth. Susan David's gift is that she never promised we'd avoid pain. She only promised that we'd become more honest, more open, more able to respond with courage instead of defense. She taught that there is no one-size-fits-all answer. Only moment-to-moment choices that either take us closer to our values or away from them. And maybe that's what makes her voice so different from the typical self-help tone. She doesn't tell you how to feel better. She teaches you how to be better at feeling. And maybe that's what we all needed all along. Let me end with this. You don't have to be perfect at any of this. You don't have to get it right every day. Agility isn't a checklist. It's a practice. It's a relationship with yourself that grows over time. And some days all it means is that you looked your sadness in the eye and said, I see you. You can stay. Or that you caught yourself mid-self-sabotage and whispered, not this time. That's enough. That's everything. Let's linger in the aftermath now. Not to rush closure, but to sit with the weight of what we've just walked through. Because emotional agility isn't a destination. It's a way of relating to your life with enough presence to notice when you've drifted and enough gentleness to come back. And coming back, that's the hardest part, isn't it? Not the dramatic collapse, but the quiet daily returns. After you've reacted in a way you swore you wouldn't, after you've numbed for a few days, after you said you were fine when you weren't, that's when agility matters most. Not in your ability to prevent the drift, but in your willingness to return over and over again. So maybe emotional agility isn't just a skill. Maybe it's a form of devotion to yourself, to the truth, to what matters even when it hurts. It's a deep kind of loyalty, not the fierce performative kind, but the quiet vow to stay close to your inner life, even when it would be easier to abandon it. That's where the transformation lives, not in perfection, but in presence. And presence changes everything, because when you're truly present, you stop demanding that your emotions behave before you accept them. You stop requiring your life to be smooth before you feel worthy. You let your mess be seen. And that is where connection begins, with yourself first and then with others. Emotional agility at its core is about removing the mask, not to be raw for the sake of rawness, but to be real for the sake of freedom. It lets you love without control. It lets you forgive without forgetting. It lets you say, yes, this is hard, without needing to justify why. It lets you feel the grief without believing it's proof that something went wrong. And maybe the most powerful thing it does, it lets you live in ambiguity, in not knowing, in the middle of things without forcing a resolution. That takes emotional strength. That takes agility. What does this look like in practice? It looks like stopping mid-thought to ask, is this narrative actually true or just familiar? It looks like choosing your values in moments of anger instead of choosing control. It looks like feeling shame and choosing curiosity over self-punishment. It looks like owning your story with softness instead of bearing it in silence. And even more importantly, it looks like knowing you'll mess up and still choosing to show up again tomorrow, because now you know how. This is where we arrive, not at answers, but at awareness, not at a new personality, but a new posture. You can meet yourself where you are now, without judgment, without rush, with honesty, with love. So let's take this work and live it, not perfectly, but presently. Let's carry it into conversations, into our own self-talk, into how we hold space for others, into how we breathe through our hardest moments. You don't have to do it all at once. On just one small act of emotional presence a day changes the architecture of your inner world. It teaches your nervous system that you're no longer at war with yourself. That's the revolution.